بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله وصلى الله وسلم على سيدنا محمد ومن والاه. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Do me a favor, hit that like button, hit subscribe, share on social media if you can, please. Barakallahu feekum if you're enjoying and encouraging people to jump on this course. And if you're a Swiss student and you're engaged in the evaluations and assignments and homeworks and private meetings with me or group meetings, we have now communities at Swiss to discuss this topic. Please also share on social media. Last time we defined, according to Imam Ibn Hajib, which is considered a reference in the science of usul al-fiqh, what is a Sharia ruling. Now we want to talk about the types of rulings. If you're a serious student of knowledge, then what you understand is al-hukm shari is like a jins, and the anwa, the types, are what we're going to talk about now. If you don't understand what I'm talking about, don't worry about it. This is for like a little bit more advanced students. So he says that the rulings are 7. Most say 5. As you'll recall, I talked about last time, they don't include this. So, but here Imam al-Haramain says, وَالْأَحْكَامُ سَبْعَةٌ. The rulings are 7. Al-wajib, wal-mandub, wal-mubah, wal-mahzur, wal-makruh, wal-sahih, wal-batil. So, alhamdulillah, we're going to spend some time talking about these rulings, but before we do it, let's just review a few important key components. Number 1, the address of God. What does it mean in this definition? It means divine communication through the Quran or Sunnah of one of these things: obligation, recommended, permissible, prohibited, disliked, valid, and invalid. That is related to the acts of the mukallaf. So the ahkam are dealing with the acts. This governs human actions of legally responsible adults, religiously responsible, through requiring, meaning a command to do or not to do. I explained it last time. Giving a choice, permitting a person to do or not to do something, or establishing by making something a cause. God has made something a cause, a condition, or a preventative factor for a ruling, as I talked about last time. Now let's move on and begin to talk about each of these rulings in greater detail. So number 1, al-wajib. فالواجب ما يثاب على فعله ويعاقب على تركه. And wajib and fard are synonyms according to the majority of scholars. Only the Hanafis use fard and wajib as synonyms. The Malikis, we do it in Hajj. We don't need to get lost in that now. Let's just focus on al-wajib. He says, Imam al-Haramain, the obligatory is that for which one is rewarded for doing it and punished, potentially punished for abandoning it. What are the key characteristics? Performance is mandatory and leads to potential rewards. Omission without a valid excuse entails accountability. The demands for the action is definitive and binding. Examples: the 5 daily prayers, zakat, fasting in the month of Ramadan, Hajj. Here I put, according to Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, Allah may forgive the abandonment of obligations through His mercy, even though punishment is warranted. But who wants to play with that? Nobody. The second type of ruling is al-mandub. See the thumb up means you can do it or not do it. Here there's an exclamation point, you have to do it. Wal-mandub ay wal-mandub ma yuthabu ala fi'lihi wa la yu'aqabu ala tarkih. The recommended is that for which one is rewarded for doing it, but not punished for abandoning it. What are the characteristics of mandub that you should be familiar with? Performance leads to reward and divine pleasures. They're called mustahab. Mustahab means those things that are loved. And we know the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that a person will continue to do extra deeds, not the fard, until Allah loves them. So they're called mustahab. I don't like the translation recommended. Translate it as it is. The beloved acts. This is how we draw nearer to Allah, through the mandubat. What are the key characteristics? Performance leads to reward and divine pleasure. Omission does not entail sin or punishment. The demand for the action is not binding. There's a demand, but it's not a binding demand. So here you pay attention. Fard and wajib, the demand is definitive. Mandub, sunnah, generally, yes, as a general idea, we are commanded to observe the sunnah. But the particular components of the sunnah are not binding. Examples: voluntary nafil prayers, voluntary charity beyond zakah, fasting on Monday and Thursdays, using miswak before salah. I put here also called mustahab sunnah or tawattu'. These are different terms for the same concept. The next is mubah. والمباح ما لا يثاب على فعله ولا يعاقب على تركه. The permissible is that for which one is neither rewarded for doing it nor punished for abandoning it. Key characteristics: complete freedom of choice to do or not to do, unless you think it may cause harm. Broader discussion to be had in the future, but not now. No inherent spiritual reward or punishment unless you make intention. Can become rewarded if done with good intention. So here you see, that's why I said part 2 there needs a little bit of a elucidation. Examples: permissible food, wearing permissible clothing, most types of permissible recreation, using any permissible means of transportation. المحظور والمحظور ما يثاب على تركه ويعاقب على فعله. The prohibited. المحظور, those things that Allah has prohibited. أي حاجات محرم, something that Allah has made forbidden. What are the characteristics? Abstention is mandatory and brings reward, but without niyyah. Like, you don't have to have intention because you left all of the haram. But if you do it, it's good. But you're still rewarded without intention. So the tark does not need intention. The abstention doesn't need intention. Doing certain acts of worship needs intention only. So like, I'm not going to be punished if I don't have the intention. Like, I'm never going to do all these bad things people are doing. Commission entails sin and accountability. If someone engages in this stuff, then there is the potential, definitely, of sin is there, but then also the potential of certain types of accountability, whether temporal or corporal. The prohibition is definitive and binding. When we talk about that in usul al-fiqh, that an-nahyu yufid ad-dawam wat-tark. That the default of a prohibition is that I have to leave it and I have to consistently stay away from it. Examples: consuming intoxicants like alcohol, illicit sexual relations, theft and usurping people's property, false testimony and slander. Al-makruh ما يثاب على تركه ولا يعاقب على فعله. Makruh is the disliked, is that for which one is rewarded for abandoning it, but not punished for doing it. Although there's a lot of discussion about this, we'll have in the future in books of fiqh. Key characteristics: abstention is preferred and brings reward. Commission is discouraged but not sinful, unless it leads to sin. The prohibition here, there's a prohibition, but it's not definitive like mahdhur. So you can understand like how you have wajib and mandub. Wajib is like definitive, mandub is not. Haram is definitive, makruh is not, but they're both like, don't do this. One is like, you are not allowed to do it. One is like, it's better if you don't do this. Wajib, it's like, you have to do this. Mandub is like, it's better if you do this. Got it? Examples: excessive talking during prayer, not in salah. What he's talking about is during the khutbah. Eating garlic before attending the mosque, although some consider this forbidden. Maybe we could say this is dua. I don't like the word prayer here. Ignore this one. This is a mistake here. It's haram to talk in salah, yani. Eating garlic before, unless what he's talking about is like inadvertently someone says something, okay, that would be makruh. But if they kept talking, they would ruin their prayer. Eating garlic before attending the mosque or anything that's going to give you a stinky breath or bad smell. Wasting water during wudu. Unnecessarily eating while reclining. It's makruh. As-Sahih wal-Batil. Imam al-Haramain adds this, although the majority of books of usul al-fiqh don't talk about this in this way. So Sahih is ما يتعلق به النفوذ ويعتد به. The valid, Sahih, like we say hadith is Sahih, valid, is that which is effective and counted as legally adequate. What that means is that the outcomes of a contract are going to continue. So if the marriage is Sahih, inheritance, paternity, all that's going to continue. If it's not, those things may come into question. والباطل ما لا يتعلق به النفوذ ولا يعتد به. The invalid, and I think batil, the better word is void. Invalid implies that it happens later, and I don't want to get you caught up in this now. That would be fasid. But batil means from the get up, it's wrong. So the invalid is that which is not, especially we're talking about the Hanafi school. The invalid is that which is not effective and not counted as legally adequate. So al-batil, missing essential requirements, produces no legal effects, requires redoing or nullification. I forgot to read this over here, so let's go back. Sahih fulfills all the conditions like wudu, produces intended legal effects. I can observe the prayer. Considered legally complete or compliant. So prayer with all conditions, a valid sale contract, marriage with proper witnesses. Batil, the invalid is that which is not effective and not counted as legally adequate. So it's not legally admissible. So if the marriage is done wrong, you can't claim you're married. It's not going to have the legal outcomes of marriage. So missing essential requirements, produces no legal effects, requires redoing or nullification. So prayer without wudu, although there's discussions about this, let's just take it. We're not here to argue about fiqh issues, we're just here to present examples. Sale of prohibited items, marriage to a prohibited relation. Here's a quick, let me see if I can make this bigger. Oops, let me see if I can expand this. Yeah. Here's a quick chart. We can see sort of the different rulings and their applications. So here's a quote of Imam al-Haramain once again for students who want to memorize it. وَالْأَحْكَامُ السَّبْعَةُ الْوَاجِبُ وَالْمَنْدُوبُ وَالْمُبَاحُ وَالْمَحْظُورُ وَالْمَكْرُوهُ وَالصَّحِيحُ وَالْبَاطِلُ. Here's examples of wajib, its definition, an act that must be performed. It's great to review if you're a student. For doing, you get a reward. For abandoning, you may be punished. Examples here: 5 daily prayers and zakah. Recommended, act encouraged but not obligatory. There's a reward, no punishment. Here's examples of voluntary prayers and charity. The permissible, neutral act with free choice. No reward, no punishment. Eating permissible foods. Disliked, act discouraged but not forbidden. So no punishment, potential reward. Excessive talking during wudu. So when I talked about up there, I think it didn't mean to say prayer, it meant to say wudu. Prohibited, so my bad. Prohibited, al-mahdur, acts that must be avoided. So there is a punishment. There is also a reward, consuming alcohol or theft. Valid, sahih, act that fulfills all legal requirements, produces intended legal effects. Example, valid sale or contract. Invalid, al-batil, act that nullifies something. It does not produce any legal outcomes, prayer without wudu, interest-based contracts, and so on and so forth. Now, before we move on, let me make this smaller if I can. Oh, that's a little too small, right? So the categorization by demanded type. So requires performance. I want you to remember this. What requires performance is wajib and mandub. Some at a definitive level, some at a recommended level. So like mandub. Requiring abstention, the prohibited and the disliked, mahdur and makruh. Neither demand either way is mubah. A validation status, sahih or batil. Here's some important considerations I want you to think about. The first 5 categories relate to the moral value of actions, but the last 2 relate to the legal effectiveness of actions. So the last 2, sahih and batil, are going to be focused on contractual things. And most scholars, not some, classify rulings into only 5 categories, and they lump the others in those 5. Next time, insha'Allah ta'ala, we're going to talk about the hierarchy and wisdom of legal rulings. Barakallahu feekum wa jazakallahu khairan wa sallallahu wa sallam ala Sayyidina Muhammad. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.